Hello everyone. Welcome back to my channel. And today I have another spooky story for you all. This story was submitted by one of our subscribers. So let's get into it. My name is Name. When I was 17 years old, I worked at an assisted living home for the elderly as a caregiver. Most of the residents were Alzheimer's patients. It was my job to make sure they ate their meals and made sure they didn't wander off or hurt themselves. There was also a full-length mirror on the wall like the ones you see at a funeral home. I remember vividly that it was like an antique mirror. I remember walking into the room and the hair on the back of my neck standing up. I turned to leave, but then the door slammed shut. It was old and yellowed. It was clear this room was used for funerals because there was also a black suit hanging on a hook. I don't know how long the room had been used for that, but I do know the home was built in the 60s. Well, that was a good one. What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments below. I think our narrator did a great job with this story. You could really feel the dread building as he explored the room and found those items in the room. That's what makes a good scary story, knowing what the author is trying to build up to and getting that dread feeling while reading. I remember taking a step back and tripping over something on the floor. I fell and landed hard on my knee. If you're going to go exploring, always bring a friend. Personally, I wasn't a fan of the ending. I think every state has some creepypasta at this point. I'm not too sure. I mean, I've only done 8 videos, but I'm sure you're right. So if you have any creepypastas from your state that I haven't covered, please send them to me. I'd love to cover them. Thank you so much for submitting and sticking around for the end of the video. And now let's move on to our final segment of the show. I actually did do a top 10 best stories video. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit that thumbs up button. Also, if you have a scary story you want to submit, please send it to me at the email provided below. Anyways, that's all for me today. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye. So go back and check that out. You can find the link in the description. It's a pretty cool video. I think you'll enjoy it. I think it could have been wrapped up a little better. And if you're new, hit that subscribe button. I would love for you to join the family. Alright, moving on to our final segment of the show, should be a fun one. We're gonna look at some of your comments from the last video. I would have liked maybe a little more description on the interaction with the entity in the room, the shadow man, whatever you want to call him. Well, we only got to clown stories, but thank you for the suggestion. I will try to find 3 stories for the next one. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. But I think our narrator learned his lesson the hard way when he had to learn the hard way. As I sat there stunned, I heard footsteps coming towards me. I looked up to see a shadowy figure standing in front of the mirror. It was tall and thin, kind of like the old scarecrow that used to stand in cornfields. I remember my heart racing and adrenaline pumping through my veins. I stood up as fast as I could and ran out of the room. This was one of the first stories I ever read on this platform. Thanks for bringing back the memories. I'm glad it brought back some good memories. I actually reread a lot of the old classic stories before I put these videos together. And there are so many good ones to choose from. So if you haven't already, go back and check out some of the older videos. There are so many good stories on this channel. I ran to the door and started to scream for help. Finally, someone came. A lady from accounting came in and asked what was wrong. She walked past me to the door and easily opened it. I don't remember what she said to me, something along the lines of "it's just an old door." It does that sometimes. and she walked away laughing at my expense. It had a design on the edges of it and a silver-like material around the glass, not the cheap aluminum that modern mirrors use. Every time I walked by, I would peek in the door to see if my reflection was back. It never was. One day, a new director started. He was young and eager to make changes, so he removed the sign on the door. That same week, I was making my rounds and I saw the door slightly open again. I walked in and my reflection was back. Relief washed over me. I walked closer and my reflection was nowhere to be seen. I walked right up to the mirror and still nothing. Now, whenever I hear a strange noise or feel something brush against my leg, I immediately think back to that day. I also avoid mirrors at all costs. That experience left quite the impression on me. I am glad that my experience wasn't tragic like some of the other stories I read here, but it's still something that bothers me to this day. I could see the ceiling and the walls behind me, but no reflection. We had cameras everywhere except the bedrooms, which was good because we had people who liked to sneak out in the middle of the night and go wandering. There was one room that was off limits to the patients and staff, but we didn't know why. All we knew was that the door was locked and had a big sign on it that said "Do not open." One day when I was making rounds, I noticed that the door was slightly ajar. I ran out of that room and down the hall screaming for someone to come quick. I was freaking out because I couldn't believe what I saw. No one came. I ran into the kitchen where there were two ladies sitting at a table playing cards. I started to explain to them what I just saw and they just stared at me, unfazed, while finishing their card game. Then they went about their business like nothing happened. I tried to get someone else, but no one would go with me. They either thought I was joking or making up some far-fetched story. I remember thinking how odd that was since no one ever went in there. I looked around to see if any of the patients were in there, but I didn't see anyone. Since I was curious, I opened the door and walked in. The room was dusty and had cobwebs everywhere. In the corner was an old wooden rocking chair. I was alone in that room and I knew what I was seeing. I ended up going back alone to check the room again. After that day, no one ever went near that room again, even though it was against orders. That's when I noticed a wedding dress on the mannequin. No one believed me again when I told them. I quit the next day. Thank you so much for listening to my story. And now let's move on to my personal commentary. And this story also reminds me of a rule I always tell people: never go exploring in an old abandoned house or building alone. But what about the ending? Did you like the ending? Let me know in the comments below. And I also want to say thank you to our narrator for submitting this story. This was a very well-written story. If you've watched to this point, then thank you so much. We have a video called Top 3 Spookiest Clown Stories. And this comment comes from a user. Next comment comes from a different user. Oh yeah, I remember this story. Alright, this next one is from a different user. Yeah, I think you're right. Alright, moving on to our final comment. This one is from a different user. Well, thank you for the suggestion. Anyways, that's all for me today.